Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts.
Archlector George.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
As you know, we're covering The Blade itself, the first book in the original trilogy. We'll be covering Dark Work and Words and Dust on this episode. So let's get started. First, I guess I'll, again, continuously thank you guys for all your support. And again, just another call to ask you guys to follow us on social media. That'd be great. You guys want to talk about what we'll be doing with the YouTube videos again? Just like letting them know.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of stuff like in the works. Harrison's already uploaded a few things, but we're not ready for the big reveal yet, are we?
Not yet.
No, I think we need some time for that, but we do have some other things coming out on YouTube. Some more fun tier list videos. We have some theory videos planned out, and we have some in character discussions.
Nice. Okay. We already spotlighted the artist from the previous episode, right? Do we just want to give him another shout out real quick? I believe it was Barrett Freimeyer and design.at.j for Instagram, right?
Yeah,
Those are the ones.
Perfect.
Those guys, you've helped us out loads, and just can't thank you enough.
Yes, you guys
also
have.
your guys' your artistry is fantastic. So
Oh, yeah, we're big fans. Okay. So, what are you guys drinking today?
Fuck no, not when it's this hot.
Oh,
No,
God,
it's just-
I'm the only one, I think, because Jeff, you're not feeling too well today, are you?
No, ladies and gentlemen, your boy has COVID apparently. So, I am drinking broth, chicken broth.
I just imagine you have it in a mug.
I do. It's in a mug.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I will not be drinking. It's funny. Last week I got hammered really fast, and today I'm COVID. So please bear with me for the way I sound, everyone.
Introducing Sick Jeff.
Yay! So, Harrison, what are you drinking?
Oh, I'm just drinking some bullet rye.
Oh, there you go. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
And George, I imagine you're drinking water.
Yeah,
Smart.
because it's like 30 degrees where I am, which is hotter than it's ever been here before.
Mm-hmm.
So
For you dumb
great.
Americans, it's over 80 degrees.
That's the one. If you're all of you that use the wrong scale.
Oh, right. We do everything wrong, apparently. So I guess our first segment, since we're only doing 2 chapters this episode, we might as well just jump right into meme of the week, right? And who wants to? George.
Go for it,
So
George.
we've got, I think we've had this user before, but we've got users Spaceman with their meme, so that's going to be in the description, and that's a part of his memeing every chapter of the Blade itself, which is fantastic. So all of the memes in that so far are really good, and I'm not just saying that because I did one of them.
Yeah,
We're
no,
not
they're
just saying that
hilarious.
because user Spaceman is an awesome guy.
Yeah, no, he's
That
cool
as
too.
well.
Yeah, that
So
too.
check that out if you don't mind some spoilers.
Yeah, it is spoiler. I guess we could say spoiler related, right?
Yeah. Although I think you could read it and be like, what do they mean by that?
That's true.
It's
not
it's
too-
not explicitly spoiled,
Yeah.
but
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that, George, for our meme of the week. So our first chapter read through will be Dark Work. So we start off with Dogman. He's scouting ahead of the group, as a good scout is wont to do. And he comes across a burnt out house. It actually is a house with a barn as well. So basically, at least it was those 2 things before it was burnt down. And so then he doesn't have a good view of it. He just knows from far away that that's what he's seeing. So then he goes back to report to the dozen, which in actuality is like 6 people. And he says it. He hears them before he sees them, and he's just tired of the constant arguing. Like he's thinking he might just leave them, but that's not what a good scout does.
Yeah.
So he returns. He's just tired of it, especially with Black Dow and Tolduru. They're just talking mad shit to each other, right?
And I love this bit at the beginning where it's like, if your parents are arguing and you don't want to walk into the room, you just kind of like stood outside waiting for it to blow over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a very relatable thing right in the middle of this awful situation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
relatable.
honestly, it's anybody fighting. You're right. You don't want to get in the middle of it. You're just like, I'm just gonna
Yeah, of
wait.
course.
Mhm.
You don't want to be in. You don't want to walk straight into that situation.
The
Right.
question is, though, oddly enough, is it because you don't want to deal with it, or because you're afraid to get in the middle of it?
Mm.
Well, I think Dogman's just tired of it. For us,
Yeah.
us normal people, I think it's a mixture of both. To be honest.
Mm. And I love
Right?
how he just rocks right up to them, just being like, "You guys are just stupid, all of you."
Yeah. Yeah. He
Even
shames them
Three
all.
Trees, and Three Trees, is the leader, so you'd expect that you're not supposed to insult him or something. But no, he's a
Right.
stupid bastard as well.
Hmm. Yeah. He says, "All five of you fuckheads." He's just tight. He's just so upset. Then Three Trees accepts, the shaming, and then he asks, Dogman, what did he find? And he reports to them that there had been some fighting not far from where they're at, and that a farm had been burned out. So they return for a closer inspection, and they see that there's an old man was hanged, along with a younger woman and two children. And the older man had two arrows sticking out of him. So obviously there was some, like maybe he tried to defend himself or his family. And they're both pretty, like, I guess you could say, stunned by this, because I'm assuming you normally don't pillage a farm if there isn't
No,
any actual like war going on in the area, right?
yeah, I mean, you don't want to pillage your own people. It's
Right.
not, it's not
Right.
productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like the whole point here is that it's less so that they're, and of course they are, especially the dogman is bothered by the fact that children got killed,
Oh, for sure.
but it's less so that all of them are as disturbed as it's them saying, "This isn't
Mhm.
even a wartime. What the hell's going on?"
Right.
Mm.
And then
And then, the extra added insult and obscenity of hanging children,
yeah.
which we know the Black Tower is a bit of a bastard. He's literally got the word black in his name, which,
Mhm.
means bad in this context.
Right.
And
And
even he balks at it.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And Paul Duru's like, I could think of something black enough that would do something like this, and he just gets blacked out, gets so pissed. He's like, "Fuck you guys." He's
He
like,
was like, we were at war. He's like, he's like, I never killed the children,
mm-hmm.
Mm.
And he says
which is
maybe my name.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He says my
because
name is
it's
blacker than it should be deserved or whatever, right?
Mhm.
yeah, it seems like Black Dow, especially right here, is he'll accept. He'll be like, yeah, I'm bad to the bone, blah blah blah. But that's why I'm more inclined to believe him right here that he didn't actually kill that many children,
Mhm.
if any, at least not on purpose, because he's like adamantly offended by this. Whenever normally he's like, yeah, that's right, I'm fucking blacked out, bitch. And here he's like, no, he's like, I have a fucking code. I don't
Mm-hmm.
do certain things. Even though everybody else in the group thinks he's a bastard, there's a little bit, and you're meant to think he's just a bastard,
Right.
that he's something else going on with him.
For sure. Um, so yeah, we get the more bickering between those two, and then Three Trees just snaps. He said he's had enough, and that the named men, basically continuing the shaming that Dogman started. So he tasked them to cut down the bodies, and he tasked Dogman with tracking down the people that committed this atrocity.
Mhm.
They go and look for him, and Dogman does, and he's just baffled at how easy it is to follow them. They're not like trying to hide their tracks. He's thinking that they're maybe even like setting a trap for him. He's so
Mm.
confused. But he sees them. They're just chilling by a fire. With I think five of them, I believe.
Mm.
And then he
But
goes
now,
back.
it does make sense that they're not expecting anyone because they're not, like you said, they're not at war. Um,
Mhm.
so why would they set a guard? Who's going to come for them?
Right.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Dogman doesn't know because they were all in the high places, but Bethod has basically consolidated power.
Exactly.
Right. Um, he reports to Three Trees. They're like, okay, weapons, and then like even Dow and Tolduru agree, like, yeah, they got to do it. And so basically, they sneak up on him, they surround him, and Black Dow's the first one to kill somebody, and then Dogman goes after his person. They just basically take out the majority of people, except they leave, I believe, two alive.
Yeah, I love this action scene as well. It's just quick and you get it over with. There's no extra detail. It's just exactly what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Joe's his fight scenes always seem really well paced out.
Oh, for sure.
They always like if it's a quick fight, it actually feels like a quick fight. If it's like a long bout, it feels like a long bout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
he's good at that.
exactly that. It's like 4 lines, and it's like a lot of motion in one go, but it works well.
That's true. The actual like fight, you could say, took like one paragraph. You're right about that. Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I like how concise these things can be because
Mhm.
it's not their focus, is it?
No.
But now we have
Sometimes
the. Go
I was gonna say sometimes the fight scene is, but not in this case.
on.
Hmm. Right. So they cornered the two people. It's a guy and a kid. It looks like maybe a 14-year-old boy. So
Yeah.
something like that. The guy had a knife. He drops it because Three Trees tells him to drop the blade. They bind them. Grim is pretty Captain Obvious over here when he says this other person's dead. Um,
Kind of like Frost, isn't it? You know.
Did.
mhm.
And I
So then
love the
we
pronunciation, the accent for Grim as well. He's just like really Scottish, and he sounds really sarcastic when he says anything.
really, yeah, that's funny. Um, I also like when Dow is staring at the one that that he tied, and he's like, "Oh, I know this guy. Mm-hmm. Groa the Meyer, ain't it? What a chance. He's been on his mind for some time." And then Meyer's just like, "Whatever the fuck." And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm that guy, but I don't need to ask your names. When they find that you've killed us, the king's collectors, you'll be dead men anyway." And then Blacked Out just says, "Blacked Out, they call me." And then he's like, "Oh fuck."
Shits himself.
And then the kid looks up to him and say, "Blacked Out? You? What? Not the same." Oh fuck. They both do. Oh fuck. And then this part where he's like he nods slowly, and then that smile is just spreading across his face. That's intimidating as shit.
Yeah, and he does this quite a bit actually.
The nasty killing smile. It's like,
Yeah.
mm,
I wonder that with Black Dad too, like how much of that is him fronting to make people afraid of him, you know?
could be.
I mean,
He's got a reputation to live up to. I'm sorry, George.
exactly. I was just going to say that he's obviously cultivates his reputation quite well.
I mean, we see in the series the whole thing that reputation in the North is almost everything. You don't even have to be an amazing fighter if so long as you have a certain reputation.
So Dow asks him like, "Who's this king? What is it that you're collecting for him?" Groa doesn't respond kindly, and then he proceeds to get a couple of punches in the face from Three Trees and Dow.
They don't even have to talk to each other. They just do it
Do it.
automatically.
That's how like they have that chemistry. They've been fighting together for a long time.
I just love this like random slapstick moment.
Yeah. Also, like, it's kind of fun. It sounds. You're right. He slaps him and he slaps him again. But like, these guys are huge. These guys are warriors. So, like, imagine getting like bitch slapped back and forth by
Mm-hmm.
Taldaru's, brick of a hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was Three Trees, but yeah, I know because Three Trees. He's a solid dude
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Three
He
trees and
is
blacked out. Yeah.
solid. Um, and then he says, "We ain't fighting." After Three Trees asks him like, "What's the fight?" You might as well be dead, you bastards. You don't know what's happened. So now they're all like, "Uh-oh, what does he mean?" Um, like, so who's still fighting? Who won't kneel to Bethod? And then the guy laughs and he says, "There's no one left. The fighting's all done. Bethod's king now, king of all the North." And then they ask him about like these people, like, what about Old Man Yawl or Scything? Would that
Yeah,
make
and we
sense?
get Old Man You're mentioned in the first few chapters as well, which is a nice callback.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, Scything and Rattleneck, and they're all dead. The only fighting that is done now is when Bethod's going to war with the Union. So they're all
Yeah.
kind of just flabbergasted. And so then he goes, if Dogman asks him, like, if there's no fighting, well, what's going on? Why are you guys killing for? And then he proceeds to not respond kindly. And then Tulduru, gives him a crack. And then they ask him again, and he says, taxes. And they're like, taxes? What in the fuck is that?
Yeah, doesn't even know the meaning of the word. I love that.
Yeah, and they're like, they wouldn't pay. And he was like, taxes for who? And then they're like, for Bethod. He took all this land, broke the clans up, and took it for his own. So the people owe him, and they came collecting. And so then they're just upset now. They're like, fucking, ugh. They're just tight. They're like, this is a southern like fashion. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, he kind of did a before I don't think there wasn't taxes. It was just you lived on a clan land. Probably maybe even closer to like the Scottish clan system. And somebody owed your land, but you gave them food and shit, and they'd protect you. But now Bethard has made it a more of a and he says he's breaking up the clan and redistributed it and stuff. We see, later on that he's basically given different regions to certain people. He's given it back to the clans, but under his fiefdom. He's kind of made it a like a
Like a
vast,
more organized society.
yeah. He's made it like a fiefdom type of state, a feudal system. I'm sorry, he's
Feudal.
made it
You
an
got it
actual
right.
feudal,
Yeah, I think you got it right.
rather than a clan system, which is interesting and quite impressive.
Especially for such a short space of time.
Yeah, single-handedly does all that.
Yeah, the guy's efficient. One thing we could say about him. Well,
Yeah.
besides other things.
Say one thing for Bethard. Say he's efficient.
Mm-hmm. And then they're all like, okay, we've heard enough. This is it's oh, I like this part though when Tolduru is like squeezing this guy, the guy, choking him, and he's like so angry that that they would kill innocent people basically just for taxes. And then Dao, he comes in and he's like, all right, Thunderhead. He's just like patting his hands or whatever, pushing him gently away. He's like, you're right, this isn't for you to kill a man like this. That's why you bring people like me. And I was like, oh, goddamn.
Yeah.
Get it, Black Dao, with the intimidation again.
I really like the Black Down moment again because it shows like he kind of puts himself in that position. Yeah, again, like he smiles and leers, but then you see him go, "Okay, friend, let me handle this because I can handle it. I can hold the responsibility of killing a man in cold blood. Don't worry about that. I'm big enough for it."
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I love how the Maya comes up and he's just like, well, you give me a sword and we'll just have a fair fight. And Black Dog's just like, nope.
Like, you had your
Just
chance, buddy. You
splits
had
his
a knife.
fucking head open.
Yeah, he's like, you had a chance. You had a knife. And then this part is tough. When the boy is like, he's still alive. They're like, uh-oh. And then he goes, you're with them, ain't you? 9 fingers and everything. And they're like, yep. And then he's like, what are you going to do with me? And then the dog man's already like, well, that's the question.
He's like,
And
I'm
then
not
Three
gonna
Trees is like, he can't stay with us. We can't take the baggage and we can't take the risk. Forley's trying to, be like, he's just a kid. We could let him go. But
Oh, poor Forley, how naive.
I know. But then they all knew they couldn't. And then Tall's like, nope, we can't trust him. Not here. He tells someone we were back, then, just give away the position.
Yeah,
Then the kid does have a good point. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Harrison?
I was just gonna say it's saying something. The fact that even Toldaru, who's kind of the nicest one of them all, is like, no, we gotta kill him.
Mm-hmm. And then he says, what choice did I have? He wanted to go south, fight for the Union, but they sent him there to get taxes. His chief says, do a thing, then you got to do it. And Three Trees is like, yep, no, you do. No one says you could have done different. And then he tells him, he's like, I didn't want to be a part of it. Like, this is a kind of a tough read, He's like, I told him to let the young ones be. You got to believe me. And then he goes, Forley looks at it. He's like, we do believe you. And the kid's like, but you're going to fucking kill me anyway? And Dogman's like, ugh. Well, we can't take you with us, and we can't leave you be. And
yeah, it isn't fair, is it?
No.
But that's just like a running theme in these books where people don't get what they deserve.
Right. And he says, like, I didn't want no part of it. The boy hung his head. Don't hardly seem fair. And then Three Trees is like, yeah, it's not fair, but it is what it is. And then Dao just,
Yeah, and he hits him on the back. Again, he does this little thing where he hits him on the back of his head. That way he falls face first. That way the guys don't have to look at him.
Right. And when the kid hung his head, too, like, he timed it, I guess,
Yeah, I would say that's also an interesting... it's kind of an anti-trope thing that Joe does here, because many times in these stories, there's like a young kid, like 14 years old or even younger, and the group is like, oh, I know that we're upset with you guys for killing kids, and so because of that, we're going to let you go to show that the heroes are like morally better. Like, they come upon this group, they kill children, and now they're not going to be the one to kill children. No matter what, they're going to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in actuality, that's not the point of it. The point is they're going to get found out if they let him live. So, oddly enough, they do the same thing they just got pissed at them for.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be realistic.
Yep, as Logan would say. So then they move on from that, and then they find Bethod's army, right? And or at least some of it. And I guess these what we would call levies. Like they're
Well,
not really properly equipped.
they're actually they come across I forgot what do they call that term? They call it a
Roles.
gathering
Oh,
Yeah.
or something. I'm trying to remember what it was called.
Oh, they call it a weapon take.
Weapon, yeah, weapon take. So they actually come across a weapon take for like recruits and stuff getting ready to fight the Southerners.
That's what it is. Okay. Um. So it's a decent size, but they're all heading towards England. You know, Dogman did some scouting and reports back to Three Trees what he saw. And now they start getting worried because, like Bethod's taking all the fighting men. You know, he's taking them all south to England, but the Shenka are coming over, and like it's almost like no one knows, and it's almost like they admit that there's no one really to warn except for Bethod himself. So Forley's the one that's like, well, we got to tell him, you know. He may be a heartless person, but heartless bastard. But at least
I
he's
like
a man.
this bit of bravery from this guy who we know to be like,
Mm,
stereotypical coward,
right,
but he's the one that volunteers to go.
right, because he knows like Bethod's got no reason to fear him. He's known as the weakest, you know.
Yeah, and Dogman's like, damn. Okay,
Mhm.
Forley. Okay.
Yeah, they're all like confused. They're just like, uh oh, but what if he kill him, you know? And they're like, it's not a good plan, but it's pretty much the only plan they have.
Yeah.
There's no one else. So, how would you guys rate this chapter?
I'm gonna give this one a 4 out of 9 fingers.
Okay.
We get a lot of deep stuff. We get a lot of like Harrison said, that really good moral dilemma where they could have just let him go, but got to be practical.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a short one, and not a lot happens. So yeah, 4 out of 9 for me.
That's a good one, George. Harrison?
As a quick side note, random little historical thing here is Three Trees is stated to have a metal rim around his shield, and that seems to be the case for all the Northmen. So it's interesting because that's actually not historically how those big round shields were made,
No,
because the
it
weapon
would
would
just be too heavy, wouldn't it?
well, it would more like be because the weapon would slide off. You want it to bite into the wood. That way you can yank it out of somebody's hands, or that way their weapon gets stuck, or that way all that. And then you can just get a new shield. But Northmen tend to get a shield and then have it for their entire lives. And I wonder if that's because of the metal rim. And obviously you can use a shield like that more effectively as a weapon if need be, if you have it at the metal rim. There are some benefits. But it also just isn't historically normal. But this is the way it is in Joe's world, so I just found that interesting.
No, that's interesting. That's a good point as well. I mean, the metal rim, like you said, it's not very practical. It's expensive, and shields of this size, large round shields, aren't really for melee combat anyway. They're more used to block arrows.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that is an interesting sort of blend of the sort of fantastical and the historical.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought it was cool, the idea of there being a metal rim around a shield, because I feel like, you could, you could just hit people with it, but it also doesn't make as logical sense. But, and then for my rating, I would say I give this one a 3 out of 9. It's a fine chapter. I like the more dilemma, and I like the Black Dow subtleties here. But like you guys said, it's kind of a short one, and it's kind of it's still kind of this at this point. It still kind of feels like a normal. It's just like a very stereotypical fantasy like moment. This I feel like I've seen this scene before, which is rare for Joe's stuff. It always has a twist on it, and for this one, it feels kind of like a normal scene in a normal book.
Except for killing the kid.
Yeah, but even then, though,
Yeah.
they so.
Okay. Well, I'll actually agree with George. I was gonna give it a 4. All you guys just basically said the same reasons, and my brain's kind of shutting off. So,
You're okay, Jeff.
so our next segment is our question of the week. Harrison, I think you said you wanted to take this.
Yeah, so we have a gentleman on one of our social media platforms who asked us the same question about
The shit
the
stick.
the shit yeah the last week with that what did Northmen wipe their asses with. He basically asked us, if the Magi live forever or are long lived, what's the deal with Malagas? Like, is he older than we think he is, or is it a case where he hasn't gotten those abilities yet and whatnot? So we figured we'd just talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd say he hasn't been able to achieve that, like the long lived. I think he's a normal person with a regular lifespan until he achieves enlightenment, quote unquote.
I think that's it. Like, because Joe doesn't do much expansion on his sort of like magic system or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know like at what time or what kind of level you have to be before you get the immortality perk.
Oh, great! I've unlocked immortality.
Ding!
Yay!
And then
I
just
would.
suddenly live forever.
So I think if we notice something in the histories here, there's a little bit of spoilers, but nothing substantial here. Is after the Canadius Juvens War, is whenever things start really getting bogged down with magic, and it's only then that we actually from then, and then we see Baez. We know Baez founded the Union, or at least so they say, um, and within that time frame there, Baez seems to age a lot. So I'm not certain it has to do with like it could be a gift from Juvens and it's connected to magic directly. And since magic started leaking from the world more quickly after the fall of the Master Maker, now they're all aging quicker than they would have before. It could be they didn't age at all before and now they do. And that's why we see them as old, even though they were younger, 500 years ago.
Mhm.
So in terms of the Malakas, I also think that he probably just hasn't had the ability. As we know, eaters have to have the potential to become eaters, just like they had to have the potential to become a magi. So my guess is Malakas has the potential, but it hasn't actually, like you guys said, unlocked the perk yet.
'Cause he's a lazy little shit.
Yeah, that's right. He is. Yeah, hashtag fuck Malakas.
Leave him be.
Fuck Malakas quiet.
Oh no, George, you jump ship too?
Yeah,
Oh,
defo.
defo. Okay. I don't have the energy to defend him right now. So fuck.
Yes, we
So
win.
fucking. So fucking too.
Finally.
Oh Lord. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That answered that asked that question. We hope our answers appeased you, appeased your curiosity. We'll do the second chapter read through now, which is Words and Dust. Who wants to take this one?
Go ahead, George. You started off, brother.
I love this chapter. It's one of my favorites. I love the university. So we get Glocka, he's oh no, it doesn't start with Glocka actually. Sorry, no, it starts back at the contest. So we get Giselle's second. Oh, it's not Giselle's. Sorry, it's Gorst and Kirsta.
We
We
do
get to see
start. To
Gorst
be clear, we
fight.
do start with Glocka. We do start
Let's
with
just
Glocka.
let's
It's
just cut that out.
we do
Yeah,
start with Glocka watching Briverden Gorst fight Kirster Dan Verms.
Yeah, I got ahead of myself there. Sorry. Yeah, and this is the first time we see Gorst fight. We've heard lots about it. We got the peeler of steel and the fact that he's just
Pila of Steel just out.
Yeah. And how Giselle mentions in the last one that he looks more like a labourer, and we get like a confirmation of that now. Like he's just an absolute beast. He just beats the shit out of this guy, and there's there's no finesse to it like there's supposed to be. It's like you go into a fencing match with a claymore.
Yeah, it's interesting because the crowds are cheering on Kirster because he's the stereotypical youth. He's the blonde-haired, spry Adjuan, and Brimadan Gorse is from Middleland, but he is this bull of a man, and he is not fighting the way he's supposed to be fighting. He doesn't care about showmanship. He just cares about winning.
Mm-hmm. That's
Exactly. And I love that. It's just such a good, because obviously this Ghost, he just doesn't give a shit, like you said, and he looks bored. He just eyes are red and just a bit bored looking this
true.
entire time, and it's like, why is he even there?
Right.
He knows he's just gonna win.
Yeah, nothing's even a challenge for him.
Right. I like how Glocka kind of sees this in advance, and he bets heavy on course, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like Glock's only other thing is that he knows fencing really really well, like it's like a science for him.
Hmm. And I love how Glocka bets more than the bookie can take.
Yeah, because
He
he like
wants
just knows
200,
he's gonna
but
win.
yeah. And 200 sounds like a lot of money. I know there's no like currency conversions or anything like that in this series because it'd just be superfluous, wouldn't it? But 200 marks, that seems like
Well,
quite a
as
lot
you
of money.
well, we know that Captain Luther, Mr. Ladislaw, he had betted what was it, 1,000 marks. He's like, "You're my man, Luther." He betted 1,000 marks on him. So
But he's the prince.
right,
You
but
know,
like,
obviously money would mean less to him.
yeah, it's true. And then Luther at that point also says he's like he has a good authority that he actually has twice that amount betted on Gorst or whatever.
Playing for both sides, I like it.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Uh,
we continue on, right?
yeah,
Yeah, we get
Glocta basically just starts laughing his ass off whenever Kirster gets put in his assy. Glocta is so exhilarated by it. He's like, "This is the best time I've had in years."
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And everyone else is like all upset in the stand. They're like, "Geez," probably because they see this crippled man cackling with laughter as their hero youth is thrown on his ass.
And I love that. I love how he just doesn't give a shit. Everyone's staring at him, and he's just there, and he can't help
Mhm.
it.
I mean, it'd be super weird, right? You're at a fucking game. You're watching a football game, and your team starts losing, and you look over and you see some old, like, withered person, like, ah! It's like fucking busting up
He's
laughing.
cracking up.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So then Glocta goes to the university, which as was
Mm-hmm.
mentioned by the Mercer, the head Mercer man,
Mm-hmm.
and he remember he said, "Look at the banks, Glocta. Look at the university." And so here Glocta is, with permission from the Archlector, to get information on Bias.
Mhm.
So he comes up to this, kind of, it's a huge but worn down building, and he goes and knocks on the door, and some old man opens the door, and he's like, "What?" And then they he lets him in, and he basically, I always imagine this kind of like you go into like a haunted house, like it's just horribly lit. There's no light coming in from the outside. There's a few candles like in tiny little spaces that are like worn down to a nub, and you can't see anything. If you do see something, it looks like shit because it's just covered in cobwebs and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And this makes sense, because the old-fashioned papers very, very, very weak to sunlight. It will cause a huge amount of damage over time.
I did
Really?
not think about that.
Not having any natural light is it does make sense.
That's a good
Okay.
point. And then the little basically housekeeper leads him into the dining room. The dining room is pretty big, and it looks like it's supposed to sit like, I think, what do you say, 50 people?
Hmm.
Something like that. A lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
but there are only five. And they stand up, and we get introduced to the adeptuses um, and and the administrator. And I just like their little interaction here. All of them trying to speak over each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Yeah, they're
all
all.
jostling for funds.
Yeah. Which Glock is like, they're expecting money? That's weird.
Hmm. And I do like how we get like the five pure disciplines of like knowledge at the time, and they're all just like arguing like children. It's brilliant.
Yeah, there's Zarazin, and he's the Adeptus Mechanical. Adeptus Chemical. Then there's a younger guy named Denka, and he's the Adeptus Metallic. And then there was a Chael, the Adeptus Mechanical, and Candelau, yeah, Candelau, the Adeptus Physical. And I just like how they're like all these stereotypical old men types.
Yeah. Every single stereotype you can think of crammed into these 5 dudes. And again, I'm going to have to point out the audiobooks and how good it is that we've got 5. You know, for all intents and purposes, these characters should just all sound the same, but they've all got unique voices and characters for the little time that they're in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's brilliant. That's just fantastic.
No, it's great.
And then, yeah, Glocka asks for, well, he says that he's interested in like blasting powders, anything that can blast through a wall the way that Baez did, supposedly did. And of course, that's the Adeptus chemical. Examples, I have examples.
Yeah.
Please follow me, Inquisitor. And then, you know, he shows him. Yeah, he goes into this very stereotypical sort of sciencey environment. So we've got like all the bottles and jars and fluids and rods of strange metal and things like that, which is I love that kind of imagery. So this is just great.
It's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say on these adepti, is that what you would call them? Adepti.
Yeah.
It is interesting to know, like it's obviously this is not their prime, like the entire university. At some point, it was, and I just find that interesting.
From, like, you know, there's 5 in a dining room that could sit 50.
Yeah, it's actually 80, so that's crazy.
80.
Yeah,
I just saw that in the paragraph.
I mean, can you think about how, you know, they probably, the ones who came up with the flat bows and the interesting infrastructure that the Union has, they probably come up with most of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the Union is just kind of in a different state than it was 100 years ago, which I would say is probably when it was at its peak, was probably 100 years ago. Because these people are probably the second generation from whenever it was really running.
Interesting.
That's complete speculation, but
right. You know, I think military-wise, the Union's never been more powerful because it holds so many different territories. But
Yes.
I think, that, like you said, their infrastructure is definitely decayed. I think their political infrastructure, their educational, that stuff, I think, is decayed.
They're a little behind. Like they're starting with the progress that they have by the amount of people, whether with the merchants and people and like farmers having more power because they can hold more land and land is power, all those little things that industrial revolution kind of stuff. Those things are happening, but the Union isn't changing to adapt to it, which is causing pressure
they're not
on the structure.
Right, they're not responding to the paradigm shift. And if anything, the Union is just resting on its laurels, I guess you could say. Like, yeah, we're the Union, whatever.
Yeah, like you said, military wise, they're pretty strong. But other than that, oh god, is this America?
Oh Lord!
Oh shit! Bad infrastructure, behind education system, backwards politics, only out for themselves. Oh, a good strong navy. Oh Jesus Christ!
Listen, man, tell Joe to keep his criticisms to Britain and Britain alone, all right?
It is for Britain, too.
Yeah,
it's all the same, yet. It's all happening again.
Okay.
You guys are just us, point 2. You know?
Yeah, we're just you, but bigger.
Exactly.
Fatter.
Fatter.
Fatter. No, I said fatter.
Oh, you said fatter. Oh, that's hilarious. That's funny.
Anyways, so he goes into this little laboratory, and this guy is like he's kind of like a rat, right? He's living in like a pile of junk, and he rummages around, and he's like, here it is. Pulls it out, sets it out, and does a little presentation. Glocka's a little afraid by it too, because he's thinking, man, blasting powder must be what knocked down the wall up in the tower. He's like, this thing's gonna kill me.
Right. He's like, we are safe at this distance, right? And
of course.
This guy's like, absolutely. There is no danger whatsoever.
He just immediately shits himself.
Yeah. That was
even so, Glocka is not impressed.
No.
And it's like, yeah, no, that couldn't blow a wall in a 4-foot thick wall. How much powder would you need to do that? And he's just like, I don't know.
He's like, what? Why would you use it for that?
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah, because it only did like a sharp pop and a bit of some white sparks, some more sparks, and then just stank like shit. That's it.
Yeah, it's it makes sense too because he says that the blasting powder comes from the south of Kanta,
Mhm.
and they've had a big aggression against the Gurkish for a long time, especially in the recent years. So it makes sense that the Adeptus's knowledge of the blasting powder is limited and probably out of touch
Right.
because how else are they going to get some? That might have been his only supply.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And I
So
love how he's just like begging for money at the end. It's like, we'd need considerable funding, and then he's like,
It's actually a
"My
good move,
assets!"
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a good move on his part because he's like trying to convince him, right? He's like, listen, I can figure out more, but I'm going to need money.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then he's just coughing on himself. Then the other guy, the Silber comes in.
Yeah.
He's the administrator, right?
Yes. And Glock just basically like, I need to figure out magic. And whatever his name is like
Silber.
Silber is basically like magic. He's like offended. He's like, this is a place of knowledge.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, about magic, like historical documents. And he was like, oh,
I love the
okay.
line. I'm not asking you to get your wand out, fool.
I'm trying not to laugh too hard, but that's funny.
Poor,
Oh.
save Jeff's lungs. Don't be so funny, Joe.
Oh, it hurts. So then he just kind of like, from a historical standpoint, you fucking idiot, Baez, the Magi, that stuff.
And
So-
and then
Mhm.
he's like, okay. And he's like, there is somebody. He's like, but I'm afraid the Adeptus Historical is something of a relic.
That's hilarious. And then he goes, I need to speak with him, not fence with him.
He's, of course, Inquisitor, this way.
Mhm.
And then Glocka goes to go into a door that he
Mhm.
thinks is the right door. And Silber is like, it's really small here.
Mhm.
But he's like, Silber stops him. He's like, no,
He sees his arm. I was like,
it's the other way.
"No."
It's the other way, sir. Sir, it's the other way.
I like the spooky door. That's a great
Ooh.
little like subversion that we get. It's just like, oh, there's a spooky door in the university. I wonder what's behind it.
Sure. Uh, but then he takes him to the Abdessus Historical. He opens the door, and it's basically, you can tell this is like our library, which I'm
Mhm.
sure in its heyday was teeming with people coming in there to study and learn. But now it's like kind of like this, you go up to the secretary and the librarian's desk, except the only thing that's lit up is the librarian's desk, and you can see these stacks going endlessly down that you can't even see. It's a little creepy, a little haunting.
Mhm. And we get to meet your namesake, right, Harrison?
What?
Take it away. Take it away.
Yeah, we get to finally meet my namesake, my predecessor, the Adeptus Historical, which is funny because we don't even know his name. He just says
Right.
the Adeptus Historical.
Mhm.
And Silver is like, hello, oh, hey there, Mr. Adeptus Historical. This guy's name is Glocka. And he's like, Glocka? He's like, from the Arch Lector. Is it? And then Silver like leans over to Glocka and he's like, he's somewhat deaf because he knows he doesn't even hear him say it.
Mm.
And then he sits him down and they start talking. And Glocka basically says just flatly to him, I need to know about Baez. And the Adeptus starts talking about it, just kind of rambling a little bit. He's like, oh, Baez, first letter in the old tongue, first alphabet. And Glocka's patience is a little strained.
I love how he's just like overstating. He's like, one letter, one name, first apprentice, first letter of the alphabet. Understand? And Glock's just like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just about keeping up.
Yeah. And then this is a lot of exposition. I do
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, it's
Like a
something that
mix of character and exposition.
we don't get it very often here. I think this is probably the biggest exposition scene in the entire series, in fact. So basically, what they kind of go through, he talks about how Baez was given the name by his master Juvens. So
Mhm.
again, playing into the fact that we don't know Baez's real name.
Mhm.
And talks about how the kingdoms of Midderland were broken up into small petty kingdoms. Herod, who would later become Herod the Great, was one of those kings of those petty kingdoms, and Baez came to him, broke a table in front of him, and Herod was impressed. So he basically was like, "All right, we'll work together." And in time, they took over the whole of Midderland and united them under the banner of the Union. And then Baez went on to basically create everything within the Union. He says that he made it all. He made all the structures. He implemented all the councils. Made all the laws. He did everything. Um, and then Baez is like, "Well, was he real?" And the Adeptus Historical is like, "Yeah, no shit, he's real.
Yeah,
We know
unquestionably.
for a fact he is. You dumbass."
Mhm.
Don't know if you guys have anything to add to that part.
No, you're doing a good job.
Yeah, you're doing great.
That's what you're here for.
And then Glock just like, okay, none of that's really helpful. He's like, what about before? And the Adeptus Historical is like, there's not much to talk about before because that was during the dark times. Basically everything after the war between he says Juvens and Canadius is considered the dark time until the founding of the Union. And so he's like, well, there's not really much there. And they have this interesting conversation about Canadius, and Glocka kind of gets this image in his head of Canadius. I always thought this was a little spooky, right? It's kind of like if this was a film, we get flashes of Canadius like looking down on Glocka from the shadows above. I always thought that was interesting.
Mhm.
I do like how well these scenes all play so well to film. Like you could just imagine like a spooky old man in a spooky old building telling Glocka all this stuff, and Glocka's just getting creeped the fuck out because it all
He's
rings
like
a
looking
little bit
around.
too. It rings a bit too true, doesn't it?
Yeah, like, well, because this is supposed to be fiction. Not only does the Adeptus Historical tell him Bias is real, but he also says Canadius was real in some form. Maybe not what he believes is the Master Maker, but he's like, somebody built that bloody tower.
Yeah,
And
he's like, what? What do you mean? And I love how that is as well. Like you just forget that it's there sometimes,
Right.
Because
So
it is
easy to
just such a fixture.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and we had already talked about how the fall of the Master Maker was a whole bunch of bullshit and rubbish.
Mhm.
And now the Adeptus Historical is saying, well, yeah, it is. It's contrived and overblown. He's like, but some of it is true. And he's like, I actually have a small account of it. And oh, I'm sorry, I almost forgot to state that the Adeptus Historical says that the university was also made by Canadius. That's how old it is. It's over 500. It's probably 600 or 700 years old,
Mhm.
maybe even older than that. And that the first students in the university were actually students of Canadius himself, which I thought was really interesting because I always forget about that whenever I'm going back through it.
Mhm.
And then Glockter tells him to bring him that document that he mentioned from the Fall of the Master Maker, the original copy.
And we get the another sort of stereotype when he brings out the old scroll.
Mhm.
I do like this one. And we get, it's very sort of like it's like an epic. It's
Yeah.
part scroll three of
Yeah.
3. There's
Mhm.
2 missing. Don't really know, and it just starts in the middle of the story. Let's just go. We're going here.
Mhm.
Yeah, it kind of brings up an interesting question of too, because we got these tales, and now it's like they keep republishing, right? They keep republishing the story, the history of the Master Maker, and all that. And each time it gets more contrived, and details are lost, and things are more fun and exciting, and it makes you wonder. It's kind of like our legends that we have in our real world. About like ancient Greece and whatever. Like
Mhm.
they're obviously fantastical, but I wonder how much of it was true at some point.
Right.
Exactly.
Um,
And obviously, we know the real buyers, even if Glocta doesn't. So we can, when we're hearing these things about what he did in the past, we can sort of square it with the character that we know. Whereas
right.
Glocta, this must just be like, what the fuck? What is this crap?
It's cool too because it's kind of this weird thing with we don't know what's actually true or not because we know that bias is real, but Glocker's telling us that there's obviously something wrong, and then we have his history saying, well, it's incomplete, and then the stuff that we know is maybe not even be true itself. So it's like this constant, like we don't exactly know what's going on in the past there.
But Glocka gets what he comes for. He gets some sort of falsifiable information that he can use against Baez. He gets the seed, which is mentioned.
Yes.
And we have the key.
Yeah. The Adeptus basically just reads the little scroll thing to him, and there's some information missing. We found out that the maker, Canadius, had a daughter. That the Magi pursued Canadius. That they threw everything they had at the at the house of the maker, which is all 11 Magi throwing their fury against anything would be absolutely insane to see, because the kinds of things that we've hear about them doing in the past are quite insane. So the fact that the house of the maker is not even touched by that is pretty crazy.
And then we get the as we get on the mural in the basement, we get the death of Canadius being thrown from the bridge, or thrown from the tower onto the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting, because they managed to get in because Baez has the key.
Yeah,
and it's an interesting question. It's like, why would Baez have the key?
He didn't get the key until afterwards.
Yes, Jeff.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
he said that they killed the Master Maker and Baez took the key.
Right.
Oh, right.
The key to the house of the maker, which is what Glocka needs. He was interested. He's like the maker's daughter, and he's confused by some stuff because he's never heard of the actual retelling. This was probably made, if I had to guess, by the original Adeptus Historical.
Right.
Like one of the students saw what happened and wrote it down. And then he basically is like, okay, the key, that's what I need. It's pretty easy to tell that Glocka's thinking, if we can prove that Baez doesn't have the key, which obviously he doesn't, he's not the real Baez, that's impossible, then we can prove that he's not Baez.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, all right, I'm going to take this document. And the Adeptus Historical is like, no, you can't take this. You can't take this document.
Yeah.
You should read,
like,
dude.
Stop me, bitch.
Yeah. Or you should do how the Adeptus Historical. He says, what?
Yeah, he's like, yeah, Glocka's like, I'll be taking this. And he just took the scroll. And the Adeptus looks up. He's like, what?
You can't.
You can't. You can't take it. It's irreplaceable.
You'd think he'd make a copy of it in some of those years.
At some point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you would think so, but he probably has never gotten down before. It seems like he's like, oh yeah, there's one account. I read it like years ago.
Yeah.
And he says, Glocka's like, stop me, why don't you? I like to see it. Can you imagine we two cripples floundering around in the stacks with a bird loosing his droppings on us? It is a pretty funny image. Jeff, I didn't even bring up the bird. What do you think about the bird?
The bird didn't have the Adeptus's back, so I don't know what the fuck. What's going on with that bird?
It's a bad bird.
Bad bird. Bad bird.
The bird it's like a crow, and Glocka thinks it's a stuffed bird, and then it moves, and he's like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. He's just hopefully that bird doesn't shit on him.
Yeah.
And then
It does seem like a bad idea to have a bird in a library.
Yeah. Doesn't make sense with all the delicate.
Yeah, you imagine the lights turn on, and then you can see all these piles of shit.
It's like, God damn it.
Then the chapter. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just say it ends because the Adeptus Historical is upset. He's like, no one cares about the past. It's like, you can't have a future without a past. Who will look after it when I'm gone? And Glocka's just like, I don't know, but it ain't me.
Yeah, it's just interesting too, because it's like this is something that's happened many times in history. Is the fact that history's forgotten and lost. People forget about it. They make the same mistakes, and because everyone's kind of out for themselves, they're in their tough situation. So let's just burn the Library of Alexandria down. Fuck them. I guess.
I'm still upset about that.
Yeah.
Aren't we all, Jeff?
How dare they?
And I think it rings so true how it's like, who's gonna look after the past when I'm gone? By the way, it's me.
Mhm.
And then he says, who cares? As long as it isn't me, which is so many people.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
It's the
So
old adage of those who study history, or those who don't study history, are doomed to repeat it, and those who
Mhm.
do study history are doomed to watch everyone else repeat it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And we've seen it. We even see it in the series. Not
Mhm.
yet, but we do.
We will.
We'll
We
get
will.
there in a couple of years, maybe.
Mhm. So, what do you guys rate this chapter as?
Harrison, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I'm gonna give this chapter a 7 out of 9 fingers because I
Oh.
really enjoy it. I really like the exposition. I really like learning about stuff. I think I like it more on a second read. I like the entire series more on a second read through. But I just enjoy it. It's kind of a fun chapter. It's got some hauntingness to it. And we learned some information. The only thing I wish we got more of was the only thing I wish we got was a little bit more of it, like at least later on. But not that it's an issue. But
Okay. I get that. George?
I think I'd give this only a 5 out of 9 because I do like exposition, but I feel like it. I don't know. I love the university. I love the whole ambience. I love the 5 old men that just love arguing. It's just brilliant. But and
not a lot
obviously
happens.
The exposition is good. Not a lot happens, but
Yeah.
what really gets me is that Glocka still just doesn't believe in any of this. He's just like, he's heard all
Come
this.
on, mate.
Exactly, and he's just like, and why wouldn't you just be like, hang on, this was all sounding a bit weird. There's no way that he could have blown the hole in that wall. And he's just been proven that there's probably no way he could have blown the hole in the wall, but he's still just got his blinders on, and he's still going straight for pleasing the Archlector. So
Right.
I just wish Glocka should stop being a little bitch.
Oh shit. Okay.
Whoa.
Went straight for that. All right, George with the feistiness. I'll give this a 6 out of 9. To be honest, I really like exposition. I wanted more a little bit, but there's always that, like you guys said, the trope like we'll tell you a little bit, but not all of it, and so it's cool. It just not a lot happened.
Yeah.
So we just saw Gorse beat the shit out of somebody. Glocka had a great time, probably the first time he's laughed in quite some time, and yeah, then he just like accosts these old people at this university.
Yeah,
So yeah,
he
6
steals from an old man.
Yeah, basically he's just as crippled as the old man. He's just like, well, I'm gonna steal from you.
Yeah.
So yeah, 6
Yeah,
out of 9 for me.
And to be clear, for me too, is I like the fact that there's an exposition here. Even I've talked about how I like that Joe doesn't do exposition a whole lot because he doesn't. Whenever he does, it's very good and it's very intriguing. So that's why I liked it. Because if it was all exposition all the time, I would be like, fuck this chapter.
Right. No, I get it.
I've had enough.
You don't have to explain yourself, Harrison. You're okay. So I guess now we'll move on to our character spot. And I believe Harrison, do you want to do the character spot since
Yeah, why not? Well, it's
Why not?
obviously my namesake, the Adeptus Historical, who doesn't have a name because he's just so
Okay.
old.
Okay. Okay.
He's a very interesting person. He's kind of sad. Like the only thing he has is his books, and everyone just, he probably doesn't have any friends or family left. The only thing he has is his books and the bird. And finally, somebody sits down and takes an interest in him, and then he realizes that he's not actually there to learn. He's just there for his own personal gain. And he's kind of sad by it. Not like sad for himself. He's not like, oh, this is so terrible. He's more like, what does society come to?
Yeah.
And at this point, rightly so.
True, very true.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, what else has he done except sit around at his library his whole life?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what a little bitch.
Yeah.
What a nerd.
Stupid.
Science, bitch.
Yeah, but I totally understand that the disappointment that people just don't care about actual important things like history and and not showing any interest in it.
Do you have anything to add, George, to the Adeptus' character?
I very much enjoy the Adeptus Historical. Like, it's the very old man stereotype. He's even got the bird, which just gives him wisdom.
That's great.
If somebody has a bird, they're automatically wise,
Automatically.
especially a raven.
A random question for you guys: how old do you think the Adeptus Historical is here?
So, looking at
'Cause he's
historical
old.
examples, like the oldest that people can get is like 110. And if all the other old men who Glocka describes as old men being 30, so they're probably in their 70s. So he's got to be, around his hundreds or approaching.
Like 90. I'd say 90. I like that number. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think he's pushing 100. I think he's one of those rare instances of somebody just being absolutely ancient, old enough where nobody even remembers his name, even though he was. The other old men aren't even attached to him. You know what I mean? Like, they don't even. The other old men are like, oh, they're 70s, 80s, 60s maybe, and they're all like, and there's that one guy who's 50 who happens to be significantly younger. Like, I think he's pushing 100.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Harrison. That was our character spot for this week. The Adeptus Historical. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you for listening and supporting this podcast. As you all know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support really does mean a lot to us.
Join us next week as we do a special spoiler episode on the events covered so far.
And as always, make sure you follow us on all of our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, and anything you can fucking think of, to be honest. So just follow us there. We're Circle of the World Podcast.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you listen to podcasts on. And please rate and review this podcast as it helps to spread our reach. Thank you all again for listening.
It ain't fair at all, but there it is.